The NFL has made a shocking decision on player safety after George Kittle's blunt complaint. The 49ers star called out the league and pointed to the 2026 World Cup as proof that stadiums can switch from turf to natural grass if they choose to invest in players. Let's break down the NFL's response. It started with a memo, not a press conference, not a rulebook amendment, just a quiet league-wide memo sent to all 32 clubs on a Tuesday morning in August 2025. One piece of paper, 45 words that sent the league's most expressive tight end into something close to a meltdown. At least, that's how it looked on camera. The NFL issued that memo to all 32 clubs announcing a ban on ammonia inhalants, commonly known as smelling salts, effective for the 2025 season. Players who had been using the substance for years, some before every drive, some before every snap, suddenly found out the clubs were no longer going to hand them out. According to the memo, beginning that season, teams were prohibited from providing or supplying ammonia in any form, which included ammonia capsules, inhalers, ammonia in a cup, and any form of smelling salts, and it applied to the entirety of a game, including pre-game activities in halftime, in the locker room, and on the sideline. That memo landed in San Francisco on the same Tuesday that NFL Network had a camera crew set up at the 49ers training facility. They were there to interview linebacker Fred Warner. They were not expecting George Kittle, and Kittle was not interested in staying quiet. San Francisco 49ers tight end George Kittle interrupted teammate Fred Warner's interview on NFL Network that afternoon to break news that had left him deeply upset with the league. Warner didn't have time to react. One second, he's talking about the season ahead. The next second, Kittle is standing beside him, asking for a microphone, eyes wide, jaw set. Kittle had crashed an NFL Network interview with his own teammate to air a grievance, and once a mic was placed in his hand, he had no interest in being subtle about what was bothering him. The cameras were rolling. NFL Network was broadcasting live, and the man who would soon become the highest paid tight end in the NFL was using the platform to go directly at the league's brand new policy. "I honestly just came up here to air a grievance," Kittle said. "Our team got a memo today that smelling salts and ammonia packets were made illegal in the NFL, and I've been distraught all day." He wasn't performing distress, or at least he was selling it convincingly. And what came next made things even more dramatic. Kittle went on to say that he's a regular user of smelling salts, taking them for a boost of energy before every offensive drive, noting that he already missed them. Every drive, not just before the game, not just at halftime before, every drive. That detail landed differently than anything else he said. The ninth-year tight end went on to joke that the memo was upsetting enough for him to think about calling it a career. "I considered retirement," Kittle said jokingly, and the line immediately went everywhere. It was the kind of quote that cuts through the noise. Short, punchy, completely on brand for a player who has made chaos and charisma part of his identity since his earliest days in the league. And he wasn't alone. The same day Kittle was grabbing microphones in Santa Clara, another veteran on the other side of the country was having a nearly identical reaction. Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker Levante David publicly mourned the loss of smelling salts because he too interpreted the memo to mean an all-out ban on using them during games. David went on NFL Network's morning programming and didn't hold back either. David told reporter Kay Adams that as a competitive person, you need something to get you going, explaining that smelling salts wake you up and get you going right away, and that since 2012, his rookie year, he'd had to take one before each drive. "It's a big role in a lot of our careers," he added. That phrase, "a big role in a lot of our careers," wasn't throwaway. It was a warning shot about how widespread this practice actually was across the league. And then there was Baker Mayfield. "I'm going to be severely affected, to be honest with you," Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Mayfield told reporter Kay Adams when asked about the ban. 3 players, 3 different positions, 3 different franchises, all saying the same thing. This memo had crossed a line that players weren't willing to accept without a fight. Mayfield argued that the reasoning behind the ban, that the substance masks concussion symptoms, didn't hold up, saying that if you get knocked out, which is the whole purpose of smelling salts, to wake you up, you're not allowed back in the game anyway, he concluded. "I think it was a quick trigger to ban them." Kittle had lit the fuse, David and Mayfield had fanned the flame. And now the whole thing was a full-blown league controversy, born from a Tuesday morning memo that most people outside of locker rooms had never even thought about before. What made Kittle's moment so electric wasn't just the words, it was the setting. This wasn't a press conference podium. This wasn't a carefully worded statement through a PR firm. Kittle had crashed a live NFL Network interview to make his grievance public, and the spontaneity of it made it impossible to look away. The league suddenly had a problem it hadn't anticipated: a wildly popular, freshly re-signed superstar player using a national media platform to make them look bad. Though his on-air protest lasted just minutes, Kittle made clear he misses those already and pleaded, "We've got to figure out a middle ground here, guys. Somebody help me out. Somebody come up with a good idea." The tone was half joke, half genuine frustration, but the audience heard both halves loud and clear. The next 24 hours would determine whether the NFL was listening. And the answer, which came faster than almost anyone expected, would tell you everything about what it means to be George Kittle in today's NFL. Because when one of the league's biggest stars speaks, the league doesn't always respond. But this time they moved quickly. To understand why George Kittle's protest hit so hard, you have to understand what George Kittle means to the San Francisco 49ers and what he's built slowly and ruthlessly into one of the most decorated resumes in modern football. Because this wasn't just a loud player grabbing a camera and complaining. This was a franchise cornerstone making noise on behalf of an entire position group, an entire roster, an entire union. George Krieger Kittle was born October 9, 1993, and is the starting tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. Of the National Football League, he played college football for the Iowa Hawkeyes and was selected by the 49ers in the 5th round of the 2017 NFL Draft. 5th round. Not first, not second, not even close to the kind of draft pedigree that typically predicts a generational career. But Kittle has made a habit of beating every expectation attached to him. His father, Bruce, was a 4-year letterman and co-captain of the 1982 Rose Bowl squad at Iowa and is a former college football coach. Football wasn't a hobby in the Kittle household. It was the language they spoke. George grew up soaking in film, technique, and the kind of obsessive attention to detail that you don't learn from coaches alone. You learn it from watching your father see the game differently than everyone else. When drafted in 2017, Kittle signed a 4-year, $2.69 million contract with a signing bonus of $298,287. That's a 5th-rounder's deal. Minimal guaranteed money. A contract that says the team likes you but doesn't quite trust you yet. Kittle took that contract and spent the next several years methodically dismantling every reason anyone might have had not to trust him. By the time 2018 arrived, it was already clear that something different was happening in San Francisco. Kittle broke the single-season receiving yards record for a tight end, and he did it in a way that made other teams' defensive coordinators visibly frustrated, because he wasn't just running routes. He was running through defenders, around defenders, over defenders, and doing it with the kind of joy that made football feel urgent and alive. He racked up 8 straight 500-yard receiving seasons, joining Rob Gronkowski and Pro Football Hall of Famer Ozzie Newsome as the only tight ends in NFL history to register 500 or more receiving yards in each of their first 8 career seasons. Kittle is a 7-time Pro Bowler and was a first-team All-Pro in 2019 and 2023. Those aren't participation trophies. Those are elite-tier honors voted on by coaches and players across the league. People who watch film, who game plan against him, who understand what it takes to move the chains at the NFL level, and they keep putting Kittle's name at the top of the list. In 2024, he posted 78 catches for 1,106 yards and 8 touchdowns, becoming just the 5th tight end in NFL history to record 4+ 1,000-yard seasons. That's elite company Travis Kelce, Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski, Jason Witten, and now George Kittle, the 5th-round pick who some teams passed on 4 times before San Francisco took a shot. And the league noticed. On April 29, 2025, the 49ers and Kittle agreed to a 4-year, $76.4 million contract extension with $40 million guaranteed. That wasn't a team doing a guy a favor. The deal carried an average annual value of $19.1 million, surpassing the previous record of $19 million set by Arizona Cardinals tight end Trey McBride earlier during that same offseason. Kittle signed that deal and became the highest-paid tight end in the NFL, a record set just months before he'd walk onto an NFL Network set and demand accountability over a memo. Key to every aspect of the 49ers offense, Kittle was PFF's best-ranked tight end in 2024. With an overall grade of 92.1, besting the second-place finisher by more than 5 points. PFF also graded him as the position group's top receiver and second-best run blocker. That combination, elite receiving and elite blocking in the same player, is what makes him irreplaceable. You can find one, you almost never find both. Kittle gives you both, and he gives them to you on back-to-back plays without breaking stride. Kittle owns franchise records for the most receptions and most receiving yards by a tight end in 49ers history. Those records sit in a franchise whose all-time yardage list includes Jerry Rice and Terrell Owens. Kittle ranks third among all players in franchise history, behind Jerry Rice's 19,247 yards and Terrell Owens' 8,572. That's the conversation Kittle is in. Those are the names surrounding him in the record books. But what really defines Kittle isn't the stats or the contracts or even the records. It's the persona, and it's not manufactured. The man who ran onto that set in August 2025 is the same man who uses his favorite wrestler's Cerro Miedo taunt when he gets a first down, who crashed a teammate's TV interview to air a grievance about smelling salts, who jokes about retirement and then goes out and posts 1,100 yards. Kittle is a fan of professional wrestling, having cited Penta as his favorite, and uses the Cerro Miedo taunt, Spanish for no fear, when he gets a first down. No fear. That phrase follows him everywhere. So when the NFL's memo landed and Kittle decided he wasn't going to sit quietly, nobody who knew him was surprised. What was surprising, what nobody had fully anticipated, was how quickly and completely the machinery of the NFL and its Players Association would respond to his very public complaint. The thing about being George Kittle is that when you talk, people actually stop and listen. And in August 2025, the league was about to prove exactly how true that was. Here's what makes the smelling salts story more than just a viral moment from a training camp sideline. There's a real, complicated medical debate underneath it, and the NFL was trying, however clumsily, to navigate it when they sent that memo. The league didn't ban smelling salts out of spite. They did it because a federal health agency had sent up a warning flare, and the league's own medical committee decided the risk wasn't worth the ritual. According to the NFL's own memo, in 2024, the FDA issued a warning to companies that produce commercially available ammonia inhalants, as well as to consumers, about the lack of evidence supporting the safety or efficacy of ammonia inhalants, marketed for improving mental alertness or boosting energy. That's not a fringe concern. That's the country's top food and drug regulatory authority telling the world, we've looked at these products, and we can't tell you they're safe for what people are using them for. The FDA noted potential negative effects from ammonia inhalant use and flagged that the substances had the potential to mask certain neurological signs and symptoms, including some potential signs of concussion, which led the NFL's head, neck, and spine committee to recommend prohibiting their use for any purpose during NFL play. That last part is the part that matters most. Concussions have been the NFL's defining crisis for the better part of 2 decades. The league has paid enormous sums in legal settlements, reshaped its kickoff rules, and invested heavily in helmet technology, all in the name of protecting players from brain injuries. Smelling salts landing on the same table as concussion risk wasn't something they could just ignore. So what exactly are smelling salts, and how did they become standard issue in NFL locker rooms? They can come in the form of bottled powders or packets that feature ammonia and other chemicals. And while they're mostly used medically to treat fainting victims, athletes have used them for years as a way to become more alert before or during a game, in order to boost performance. Once the ammonia fumes are breathed in, the substance triggers a reaction that sends a jolt of adrenaline throughout the body while also clearing out nasal passages. That adrenaline jolt is the point. It's the sharp, jarring sensation that some players describe as a reset button, something that cuts through the fog of a long game or a brutal hit and snaps you back into focus. When inhaled, the ammonia gas activates receptors in the nose, which leads to a cascade of reactions that cause an increase in respiratory rate, cerebral blood flow, and heart rate. For players operating in a sport where half a second of mental clarity can be the difference between a big play and a blown assignment, that reaction has real perceived value. But perceived is doing heavy lifting in that sentence. According to at least one study published in a sports medicine journal, physiological and performance-enhancing effects of ammonia inhalants remain poorly understood. And one study concluded that ammonia inhalants have no role in medical management of head injuries and have limited benefit with regards to sports performance. The science isn't settled in favor of the product. It's murkier than that, which is exactly what makes the FDA warning so significant, and exactly what makes the player's attachment to the substance so interesting. Because from a player's perspective, it doesn't really matter whether the research validates the performance benefit. What matters is that it feels like it works. Kittle told NFL Network he uses it before every offensive drive. That's a routine, a ritual, a psychological anchor. Levante David said he's been doing it since his 2012 rookie year. Baker Mayfield said he'd be severely affected without it. These aren't people describing a medical treatment. They're describing a habit that's woven into the architecture of how they prepare for battle. And habits that run that deep don't respond well to Tuesday morning memos. Though smelling salts release a small amount of ammonia vapor, the long-term effects of repeated exposure aren't well understood. One neuropsychologist noted that whenever you're using a tool outside of its recommended use, you're in kind of uncharted territory, and suggested that in the absence of evidence that it actually improves anything, it's reasonable to prioritize somebody's health over an unproven substance. That's the medical community's position. Reasonable, measured, data-driven. But that's not how locker rooms work. The NFL's own chief medical officer had, separately, been making a parallel argument around playing surfaces, specifically around the question of artificial turf versus natural grass. Dr. Alan Sills, the league's chief medical officer, has said there are no statistically significant differences in lower extremity injuries or concussions that can be attributed to the type of playing surface or a specific surface. The league has a history of citing its own medical analysis when pushing back against player concerns, and that pattern had been frustrating players for years before the smelling salts memo ever dropped. What the NFL's medical team missed in the immediate aftermath of that memo is that the policy wasn't just a health question in players' minds. It was a trust question. Were clubs prohibited from handing out smelling salts because of genuine safety concerns? Or was it another decision made above the heads of the people actually playing the game? The NFL Players Association sought clarification on the league's ammonia ban and, in a message to players on Wednesday night, indicated that the union had not been notified of the club policy change before the memo was sent out. Not notified. That detail slipped by in most coverage of the story, but it matters enormously. The NFLPA is supposed to be a partner, a voice at the table when the league makes decisions that affect player welfare. Dropping a memo banning a widespread pre-game substance without notifying the union in advance isn't just poor communication. It's exactly the kind of move that makes players feel like decisions are being made about their bodies without their input. And that's the through line here. The science around smelling salts is complicated. The policy rationale was defensible, but the execution, a surprise memo with zero consultation, handed Kittle and every other player who felt the same way a legitimate grievance. Not just about ammonia packets, about process, about respect, about who has a seat at the table when the rules of the game change. The response came within 24 hours. One day after Kittle crashed that set and declared he'd considered retirement, the NFL Players Association sent its own memo to players. And the message inside changed everything about how the story was being told. The league had moved. Not all the way, but enough. And the speed of that movement said something. The NFL clarified the policy on Wednesday, telling the NFLPA that players could still use smelling salts that they supply themselves per ESPN. Read that again slowly. Players can still use smelling salts. They just have to bring their own. The clubs, the teams, the trainers, the sideline staff can't hand them out anymore. But if a player wants to tuck a packet into his equipment bag before leaving the locker room, nobody's stopping him. The union's message to players said, "We were not notified of this club policy change before the memo was sent out." To clarify, this policy does not prohibit player use of these substances, but rather it restricts clubs from providing or supplying them in any form. The NFL has confirmed this to us. That clarification, 3 sentences, effectively unwound the panic that the original memo had created. And it handed Kittle's spontaneous on-air protest something it wasn't guaranteed to get, a resolution that tilted in the players' favor. After the loud backlash from players, the NFL Players Association clarified that the league hadn't banned the use of smelling salts, just banned teams from being the suppliers. That's a distinction that sounds small until you actually sit with it. Clubs can't supply it. Players can still use it. The league drew a line, not where the players feared it would be drawn, but somewhere players could live with. Kittle and the rest of the league would be able to use smelling salts. They just have to remember to bring their own, So the man who said he considered retirement over this policy effectively got the outcome he was pushing for, not the full rollback. The league didn't reverse course entirely. The clubs still can't stock smelling salts on sidelines or in locker rooms. But the players' right to use the substance they've built rituals around, that survived. And that's the decision. That's the moment the NFL made. Within 24 hours of Kittle going public, the league clarified a policy in a way that pulled back from what players had feared was a total ban. After loud backlash from players, the NFL Players Association clarified in its own memo that the league hadn't banned the use of smelling salts. It had only banned teams from being the suppliers. The optics of that sequence are hard to ignore. Player complains, league adjusts. Not the other way around. Now, it's worth being precise about what actually changed and what didn't. The original memo's core policy, clubs cannot provide or supply ammonia in any form, remained fully intact. The ban only prohibits team employees from distributing smelling salts and other ammonia inhalants during pregame, halftime, or games on the sideline or in locker rooms. The NFL wasn't reversing that. The clarification that followed didn't walk back the club's restriction. It simply confirmed that the restriction didn't extend to players themselves. But in practical terms, for Kittle and players like him, the clarification meant their pregame ritual could continue. Despite the confusion surrounding the league memo, players would still be able to whiff smelling salts during games, as long as they bring their own stash. Kittle doesn't need the trainer to hand him a packet. He can stock his own. The routine he's built, sniffing before every drive, can keep going. The only thing that changed is who's responsible for the supply chain. It's a very NFL solution to a very NFL problem. The league gets to say it took the FDA's safety warning seriously, drew a firm line around institutional distribution, and protected itself from liability. The players get to say their right to use a substance they've relied on for years wasn't taken away. And the NFLPA gets to say it went to bat for its members and came back with confirmation that the original interpretation of the memo, a total ban, was wrong. Everyone walks away with something. Nobody fully wins. Nobody fully loses. But here's where it gets interesting when you zoom out. The speed of the clarification wasn't accidental. The NFL doesn't move that quickly on player concerns as a rule. The turf versus grass debate, which Kittle also has strong opinions about, and which we'll get into, has been grinding through the league for years without meaningful resolution. Player safety concerns about hip drop tackles took multiple seasons to result in rule changes. The smelling salts clarification came in one day. After the memo was circulated, Kittle said in an interview with NFL Network that smelling salts had been made illegal in the NFL, noting that he was distraught because he uses them multiple times a game. That clip went everywhere. It wasn't just a sports story, it was entertainment. It was Kittle being exactly who he always is: loud, funny, genuine, and impossible to look away from. And that visibility created pressure the league felt in real time. The man who is currently the highest paid tight end in football publicly going to war, even half jokingly, with the league's new policy. On NFL Network's own platform, with Warner standing next to him looking slightly baffled, was not the kind of moment the NFL wanted attached to the start of training camp. They needed the story to resolve, and it resolved remarkably quickly in Kittle's direction. The smelling salts episode wasn't the only time in recent memory that George Kittle drew a line in the sand against the NFL over a player welfare issue. In fact, it might not even be the most important one, because while the smelling salts story resolved in about 24 hours, two other battles Kittle has been waging against the league are moving much more slowly, and the stakes are considerably higher. The first is the artificial turf debate. This one cuts deep. 7 NFL stadiums installed grass fields to comply with FIFA regulations for the summer's World Cup, and roughly half the league's stadiums use turf, despite NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell saying that 92% of the league's players prefer grass. 92%. That's not a controversial preference. That's essentially universal. And yet for years, the league has operated as though the player's preference didn't constitute a compelling enough reason to make a change. Kittle called out the NFL for installing grass fields to comply with FIFA World Cup rules, while ignoring players' long-standing preference for grass over turf. And he did it in a way that was hard to dismiss because the facts were sitting right there in plain sight. The same stadiums that had been telling players for years that turf was fine, that grass wasn't feasible, that the logistics were too complicated. those same stadiums were tearing up the synthetic surface and laying down natural grass so that FIFA could hold a soccer tournament. Kittle, on a podcast, pointed to FIFA World Cup matches being played on natural grass inside NFL stadiums as proof that league owners could make the switch permanently if they wanted to. His comments quickly sparked reactions from fans across social media. The argument he was making wasn't complicated. It wasn't a legal argument or a medical one. It was simpler and more devastating than that. If you can do this for soccer, you can do this for football. You just don't want to. Many sided with Kittle and argued that the issue comes down to finances rather than logistics. One user wrote, "Well, that's the thing, the owners don't care about anything but money." And that perception, whether or not it's entirely fair, reflects something that's been building in player culture for years. The sense that the league's financial interests and the players' physical interests aren't just different things, but often competing ones. The common speculation is that turf is cheaper to use and easier to maintain than grass, considering the stadiums host plenty more events year-round. And that's probably true. Grass requires more upkeep, more specialist management, more infrastructure. For a stadium that hosts concerts, college football games, and soccer tournaments in addition to NFL games, synthetic turf is a cost-efficient solution. But what the players keep pointing out is, cost-efficient for whom? The NFL's response to the turf pressure has been measured, methodical even. The league announced that each NFL team will be provided with a library of approved and accredited NFL fields before the 2026 season begins. That any new field will immediately have to meet new standards, and that all teams will have 2 years to achieve them. But the NFL has no plans to require natural grass fields. No requirement, no mandate. Standards for what turf must meet, but no push toward the surface players have been asking for. From the league's perspective, that's a reasonable middle ground. From the player's perspective, it's the same answer dressed up in different language. Former offensive lineman Andrew Whitworth said he would absolutely be frustrated with the NFL if he were in Kittle's position, noting that players had voiced for a long time how much they would love to have grass. And that matters because of who is saying it. Whitworth is not a young player with a chip on his shoulder. He is a veteran who spent years in the trenches, took the hits, and walked away with the kind of credibility that is hard to argue with. When a man like that says the frustration is fair, people listen in a different way. Whitworth understands both sides of it. He knows the league has business reasons. He knows stadiums are expensive, schedules are tight, and turf is easier to maintain than real grass. But understanding both sides is not the same as agreeing the players are wrong. And that is the part that gives his comment weight. He is not saying Kittle is being dramatic. He is saying Kittle has a point. Because this is the thing that keeps getting lost. This is not one player being difficult. This is not one bad week or one loud voice. This is a steady, repeated cross-position grievance that the league keeps absorbing without ever fully answering. Linemen feel it, skill players feel it, veterans feel it, and rookies feel it. The complaint does not change when the names change. And when a complaint survives that many different players, that many different seasons, and that many different bodies, it stops being a complaint. It starts being a warning. And then there's the hip drop tackle, the thing that actually sent Kittle to the sideline and started a whole separate conversation about accountability and officiating. Because the turf fight is about the field. This is about the moment a player goes down, and the league has to decide whether anyone is responsible for it. In a Monday night game against the Indianapolis Colts in 2025, Kittle was forced to leave with an ankle injury and could not return. He went down in the third quarter. He tried to push through it, the way he always tries to push through it. But this time, the body would not cooperate. He was done for the night, and the cameras kept finding him on the sideline, watching a game he could not get back into. For most players, that is where the story ends. An injury, a quiet exit, a next man up snap from the head coach, and a few worried fans waiting on a Wednesday injury report. But Kittle has never been most players, and he has never been quiet. What he said after the game is what turned a box score line into something the league could not ignore. He did not just leave the field hurt. He left the field with an accusation forming, and he was not going to keep it to himself. After the win, Kittle claimed that it was a hip drop tackle in the second quarter that caused his injury. And the way he said it was almost more important than what he said. He did not name anyone. He did not point a finger at one specific defender or call out one player by name. He did not turn it into a personal fight, but he did put the accusation out there clearly and directly, with no soft language to hide behind. He told the world that he believed he had been taken down by a tackle. The league had already decided it was dangerous enough to outlaw, and once those words were out of his mouth, the situation changed. This was not a player grumbling about a sore ankle. This was one of the most respected names in the sport saying, on the record, that he had been hurt by a banned play. That left the NFL's officiating department with no real choice. When a player of Kittle's standing makes that kind of claim in public, the league cannot simply shrug and move on. It has to look. It has to review the tape, study the angle, and either confirm what he said or push back on it. The accusation forced a process into motion, and the result of that process would end up saying just as much about the league as it did about the tackle. According to the NFL rulebook, a hip drop tackle is when a defensive player grabs the runner with one or both hands, or wraps the runner with both arms, and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and lower body, landing on or trapping the runner's leg or legs at or below the knee. It sounds technical, and it is, but the reason the league wrote that rule in such careful detail is simple. That kind of tackle puts a player's lower leg in a place it should never be, with the full weight of another grown man coming down on top of it. It is the kind of contact that does not just bring a runner down. It folds him up, the leg gets pinned, the body keeps moving, and the joint takes a force it was never built to take. That is why it became a point of focus in the first place. The league looked at the injuries, looked at the film, and decided this was a tackle worth banning. And the enforcement does not stop at the whistle. The NFL officiating department reviews instances of possible hip drop tackles during games, even when the officials on the field did not flag them in the moment. A missed call does not close the case. The league can go back, study the play after the fact, and depending on what the investigation finds, those violations can be subject to fines. So when Kittle made his claim, he was not asking for a flag that had already been thrown. He was asking the league to go back, look again, and hold someone accountable for a play they may have missed live. But when the investigation concluded, the result was not what Kittle had implied it would be. This is where the story turns, and where a lot of fans felt the air go out of the room. Kittle did not name any names when he said after the game that he had been illegally taken down by a hip drop tackle. He left it open, trusting the tape to tell the story for him. And the NFL officiating department did exactly what it was supposed to do. It went back and looked at the tackles from the 49ers and Colts contest. It studied the contact. It measured it against that careful, detailed definition in the rulebook. And it did not see any violations from Indianapolis, despite Kittle's claim. No fine, no citation, no accountability of any kind. The league reviewed the play, decided it did not meet the definition of the banned tackle, and closed the file. The pattern people were seeing, right or wrong, was an officiating department that was not catching these plays when it mattered most. To the fans, it did not feel like bad luck. It felt like a system that wrote a rule to protect players, and then failed to use it when those players actually needed protecting. And that frustration did not stay online for long, because the season was about to deliver something far heavier than a missed call. And the injury itself was real and costly. This was not a player exaggerating a bruise to make a point. After being diagnosed with a low to mid-grade left ankle sprain, Kittle was forced to sit out all 3 practice sessions that week. A full week of practice gone. For a player like Kittle, who builds his whole game on toughness and availability, missing practice is not a small thing. It is an admission that the body needs time. And time is the one thing the NFL schedule never gives freely. He was not resting because he wanted to. He was resting because there was no other choice. And yet, looking back, that ankle sprain would turn out to be the better news from a brutal stretch. That is how cruel this run became. A diagnosis that kept him out of 3 practices. A diagnosis that felt frustrating and painful in the moment, would soon look almost gentle next to what came next. Because what was waiting for Kittle in the playoff game against the Eagles was something far worse. The ankle was a setback. What followed was a season ender. The kind of injury that does not just cost a few practices, but threatens everything that comes after it. The stretch was about to go from bad to something close to a nightmare. During the wild card round against the Philadelphia Eagles, Kittle left the eventual 23-19 victory in the second quarter, after suffering an injury while making a 6-yard reception. It looked at first like an ordinary football play, a short catch over the middle, a quick gain, the kind of grab Kittle has made 1,000 times across his career without anyone thinking twice about it. There was nothing about the moment that screamed disaster. No big collision that made the crowd gasp. No defender lining him up for a vicious hit. Just a routine reception in a playoff game, the sort of play that usually ends with a flip of the ball to the official and a jog back to the huddle. That is what makes it so hard to process. The plays that change a season are supposed to look like something. They are supposed to come with a warning, a sound, a moment where you know before it even finishes that something has gone wrong. This one did not. It came quietly hidden inside a 6-yard gain that meant almost nothing on the scoreboard. That is one of the hardest truths in this sport. The play that ends a season does not have to be a big one. It does not have to be fair or dramatic or even memorable. A man can take 10,000 violent hits and walk away from every one of them, and then a simple catch on a quiet down can be the thing that finishes his year. There is no logic to it, no warning, no way to brace for it. Football asks players to risk everything on every snap, and most of the time the body holds up. But every now and then, on a play that should have meant nothing, it does not. And there is nothing a player can do about it, except go down and wait to learn how bad it is. But then he went down, and he did not get back up the way players usually do. There is a difference, and anyone who watches enough football can feel it instantly. There is the way a player goes down when he is shaken up, and there is the way a player goes down when something has actually broken. Kittle's body told the second story. It was later revealed that he had torn his Achilles tendon, ending his season in an instant. One play, one catch, one step that went wrong, and a full year of work, sweat, and sacrifice was simply over. An Achilles tear is one of the most grueling injuries in all of football, and players know it the moment they hear the word. It is a long, painful, uncertain road back, the kind of recovery that tests a player's body and his patience in equal measure. There are no shortcuts with it. There is no toughing it out, no playing through it, no willing yourself back 2 weeks early. The tendon heals on its own schedule, and that schedule does not care how badly a man wants to return. And there are no guarantees waiting on the other side either. That is the part that haunts players the most. Some come back close to what they were. Some never quite find the same burst again. Players come back from it, but they come back changed, and they never truly know how it will feel until they are out there once more, planting that foot in a real game with real speed coming at them. Until that moment, it is all hope and rehab and waiting, and the timing made it sting even more. This was not a meaningless game in the middle of a long season. This was the playoffs, the part of the year every player grinds toward, the stage where careers are remembered and legacies are built. Kittle had pushed his body through a whole brutal year to reach exactly this moment, and then the moment took his season from him. There is something especially cruel about getting hurt in January, with the biggest game still ahead and nothing but rehab waiting in their place. He had earned the right to be on that field. He just did not get to stay on it. He tore his right Achilles tendon during the 49ers NFC wildcard playoff victory over the Eagles in January. And there is a cruel kind of math in that sentence. The team won the game. Kittle lost his season. Those two things happened on the same field, on the same afternoon, only a few feet apart. The franchise advanced. Its best player went to the locker room and did not come back. In a strange, painful way, that split result captured the whole year for San Francisco. Victories that came at a cost. Wins that should have felt like pure celebration, but instead left the locker room emptier than it should have been. They were winning football games and losing the men who made the winning possible, and by January it had become the defining rhythm of their season. That injury landed inside a season already defined by carnage for the 49ers. Kittle's Achilles was not a single tragedy that stood on its own. It was one more name added to a list that had already grown long enough to feel less like misfortune and more like a curse hanging over the whole building. Rookie Michael Williams suffered a torn ACL before he ever got the real chance to settle into the league. That is its own kind of heartbreak. A young player, his first taste of professional football, all that promise and excitement, cut short before he could even show what he might become. Nick Bosa, the heart and engine of the defense, sustained the third ACL tear of his career. Say that again, and let it sink in. The third, that is a number that is hard to even speak out loud for a player that important. A player a defense is literally built around. Each one of those tears is a grueling year of recovery, and he has now faced that road 3 separate times. Fred Warner, the same Fred Warner whose microphone Kittle once grabbed to speak his mind, dealt with a season-ending ankle injury of his own. The two faces of that team, the two loudest leaders, both watching from the sideline. Jauan Jennings played through broken ribs, the kind of pain most people cannot imagine standing up with, let alone sprinting and catching and taking hits with. That is toughness, but it is also a sign of how thin things had gotten. When a man with broken ribs is one of the bodies still standing. Brock Purdy, the quarterback, the most protected and most important player on the roster, battled turf toe, a nagging, stubborn injury that sounds minor and is anything but for a man who lives on his footwork. And Ricky Pearsall dealt with an MCL sprain on top of everything else. One more name, one more setback, piled onto a season that already had too many. Read that list once and it sounds like a horror story. A defense gutted, an offense banged up, leaders down, rookies down. Read it twice, slowly, and it stops sounding like bad luck at all. It starts looking like a pattern, like something deeper and more troubling than simple chance. One or two big injuries can happen to any team in any given year. That is football. Bodies collide and bodies break, and no roster is immune to it. But when this many key contributors go down in a single season, the question stops being why and starts being how. Why is just shrugging at fate? How is asking a real question. How does one roster lose this much, this fast? How does a single team end up with a casualty list this long while others walk through the same season mostly intact? Those are not questions you can answer with luck, and there is a hidden cost to a list like that. One that does not show up on any injury report. Every time a key player goes down, someone else has to step into a role he was not ready for. The backups play more snaps. The healthy players carry more of the load. The whole team has to dig deeper just to stay afloat, and that strain wears on a locker room in ways that are hard to measure. Belief gets tested, depth gets stretched thin, and slowly, a season that started with real hope turns into a fight just to survive each week. By the end, the 49ers were not just losing players. They were losing the margin that makes winning possible. It was not bad luck. It was a pattern. And when the NFL Players Association released its annual evaluation of team facilities, that pattern finally had a face and a source to point at. For months, the injuries had been a feeling, a sense of dread that something was wrong inside that building. The numbers were about to put a grade on everything the season had already shown and turn that feeling into something written down in black and white. According to the NFLPA's 2026 report card, the San Francisco 49ers received a C- grade for both their training room and their training staff. And those low marks did not come out of nowhere, dropped by outsiders who do not understand the game. They highlighted ongoing concerns around injuries and around the effectiveness of the staff responsible for keeping players healthy. This was not a guess. It was a verdict from the people closest to the problem. A C-. Say it slowly and let it land for a second. In school, that is the grade you bring home when you barely paid attention. The one that sits just a notch above failing and tells everyone you were not really trying. Now put that grade on the part of the organization whose entire job is protecting human bodies from harm. This is not a struggling franchise with no money and no history to lean on. This is a team that is supposed to be one of the model organizations in the entire league. A place free agents want to sign, a standard other teams measure themselves against, a franchise with the resources to be the best at everything it does. And yet the players themselves, the ones who live inside that building every single day, who get taped up in that training room and trust that training staff with their careers, looked at the care they were getting and handed back a grade barely above failing. That is what makes it sting. It did not come from a rival. It came from inside the house. For a roster that had just lost half its major contributors to serious injuries in one brutal season, that grade hit like a confirmation of the worst fear. It was the players quietly saying out loud what the injury list had already been screaming. It was not the fans saying it this time, fans who can be written off as emotional or biased. It was not the media saying it, who can be dismissed as outsiders chasing a story. It was the players themselves, anonymously and honestly, with nothing to gain and no reason to lie, telling the simple truth about how they felt about their own care. That is why the grade carried so much weight. Anyone can complain. But when the men whose careers and bodies are on the line put their honest opinion on paper, it becomes very hard to argue with. They are the ones who know. They are the ones who feel it. The grade hit hard because it connected the dots that the season had already drawn for everyone to see. All those injuries, all that lost talent, the rookie, the captain, the franchise pieces gone one after another, and now a number, an official one, quietly suggesting that the people meant to protect those bodies were not getting the job done well enough. It did not prove anything on its own, but it pointed in a direction, and that direction was uncomfortable. The report card did not start the conversation. People had been whispering about it all season long. Every time another player limped off the field, It simply took all of that whispering and made it impossible to ignore. Once the grade was out, the question could no longer be brushed aside. It was there in writing, signed by the only people whose opinion truly mattered. And a grade like that does not stay quiet inside the building. Word travels in this league. Free agents hear about it. Agents hear about it. The next player deciding where to sign now has a reason to pause, to ask hard questions about how he will be looked after if he gets hurt. A reputation built over many years can take a real hit from a single line on a report card. And that is the kind of damage that costs a franchise far beyond one season. The 49ers did not just get a poor grade. They got a warning that the thing they are known for, taking care of their own, was suddenly in doubt. And in a league where every team is chasing the same handful of great players, that doubt is the last thing any organization can afford to carry. The grade was only 2 letters and a sign, but behind it sat a full season of bodies breaking down, and a quiet question the franchise could no longer pretend it did not hear. Looking ahead, the 49ers must take a proactive approach to prevent similar situations, because a season like the one they just survived cannot become a habit. A team can absorb one brutal year. It cannot build a future on losing its best players over and over. That means real change, not slogans. It means investing in better recovery systems, the kind that catch problems before they turn into tears. It means stricter return to play protocols, so that a player who is not ready does not get rushed back into harm's way. And it means improved communication between the staff and the players, so that the people in the training room and the people on the field are finally telling each other the same story about what a body can and cannot handle. All of it points in one direction. Protect the stars, protect the depth behind them. Build a structure that can survive the brutal, grinding length of a modern NFL season instead of getting buried by it. Long-term success in this league is not just about talent anymore. It is about who is still standing in January, and San Francisco learned that lesson the hardest way there is. That is the road ahead for a franchise that just signed its best player to a $76.4 million extension, and then watched him tear his Achilles tendon in the second quarter of a playoff game. They paid for greatness. They got an empty sideline, and the only way to make sure that money means something is to fix the system that let it slip away. Through all of it, the smelling salts ban, the turf fight, the hip drop complaint, the Achilles, Kittle has kept talking. He has kept pushing. He has kept using his platform exactly the way he used it on that August afternoon, when he grabbed Fred Warner's microphone and told the NFL exactly what he thought. That moment was not a one-off. It was who he is. Most players get hurt and go quiet because speaking up is risky and because the league has a long memory. Kittle does the opposite. Every setback seems to hand him another reason to talk, and every injury seems to make his voice a little louder instead of softer. And he is not done. He has made it clear that he is open to the NFL's expansion to an 18-game season, but only if his 2 non-negotiable demands are met. He wants an extra bye week, and he is blunt about why, saying the season is too long as it is. He is not refusing the change outright. He is bargaining. He is telling the league that if it wants more football, it has to give the players more protection in return. That is the whole posture of the man in one sentence. He will play along, but not for free. He will accept a longer season, but not without something for the bodies that have to survive it. Even flat on the sideline with a torn Achilles, he is still negotiating on behalf of everyone who wears the pads. And the most striking thing about all of Kittle's grievances, the salts, the turf, the schedule, the tackles, is that they do not exist in isolation. Pull back far enough, and they stop looking like separate fights. They start looking like one argument, said over and over in different ways. They are all expressions of the same underlying truth. The players' bodies are the product. The hits, the speed, the violence people pay to watch, all of it comes out of those bodies. And if the bodies are the product, then the product deserves more protection than it currently gets. That is the thread running through every single one of his complaints. Think about what he is really pointing at. When 92% of players want grass, and the league installs it for a FIFA event, but not for the men who play on it every week. That is not just a turf question, it is a power question. It is about whose comfort matters and whose does not. And when a memo drops banning a substance player's use with no warning to the union first, that is not just a policy question, it is a respect question. It is about who gets a seat at the table and who just gets told. That is why his voice carries. He is not chasing small wins or personal grudges. He is naming the same imbalance again and again, from every angle a season can give him. The field, the schedule, The rules, the care. Different topics, one message. The people who make the game possible are not being treated like the game depends on them. Kittle has made it no secret that he is aiming for a return by week 1 of 2026, but that will not be an easy task after suffering an Achilles tear during the playoffs. It is the kind of goal that sounds simple when you say it and feels almost impossible when you live it. Think about the contrast. This is the man who considered retirement over a smelling salts memo, who took something the league treated as small and refused to let it be small. And now that same man is staring down one of the hardest recoveries in all of professional sports, the kind that breaks timelines and tests faith, and does not care how badly you want to come back fast. But if history is any guide, the recovery will not quiet him. It will do the opposite. He will come back louder, more opinionated, and more willing to grab the nearest microphone than he was before. The injuries have never softened him. They have only handed him more to say. The NFL made its decision on Kittle's complaint about that one tackle. It looked at the tape, found no violation, and closed the file. But Kittle's complaints, all of them on all fronts, are not going anywhere. The salts, the turf, the schedule, the care. The league can close one file at a time. It cannot close the argument.